You're never alone in Hollow Knight. That may sound disingenuous since you travel alone, but enemies and hostile forces lurk around every corner of its map. It's what makes the beautiful gardens of Greenpath so lush and lively. Bushes spring to life, bugs buzz in the air and charge you down, while the waters bubble and hiss, perhaps hiding some white whale deep beneath. It's what makes the game's most infamous dungeon, Deep Nest, so terrifying. Shuffles sound in the background, and silhouettes scuttle across your screen. Here, there be untold horrors. It's what makes the City of Tears so hauntingly heartbreaking. Knights patrol the gothic streets, sick-minded criminals and monstrous abominations hide behind old dusty doors, while cold rain showers the rooftops. The rain, too, dripping from the blue lake above, feels alive, like it lurks alongside you. It's not quite an obstacle, nor is it a friend. It's a part of the city's character. This is, after all, a city of tears. You're always lonely in Hollow Knight. The few friends you meet along the path tend to their own matters, though the sounds of their voices, their hums, their sing-song musings is always a welcome respite. You spend a moment with them, you reflect, maybe trade some geo for goods and services, and then you're back on the path. It's a lonely one, but it's not one that can stand to leave you alone. All the better, I say. The character and world design is so compelling and cohesive that every creature just begs to be looked at, dueled, understood on its own terms. The game's combat system is immaculate, the controls are tight, and every snap, dash, and slash feels perfectly weighted. Every fight feels like a harrowing duel, but rarely does it all feel unfair. Should you fall, your character, known simply as the Knight, will leave behind a shade of its former self to haunt whatever place you fell. Returning there lets you challenge the shade. Defeating it returns whatever experience points you'd lost on that last life. Although enemies in video games are, well, enemies, there's a comfort to having them around. They're living characters with agency and motivations personal to them. Adversarial motivations, but motives nonetheless. You're crossing swords with passersby, pesky critters, parasites, people. They're like you. Even conflict makes the otherwise lonely act of traveling alone feel a little bit less. I think the first time I noticed this was while playing Shadow of the Colossus on the PS2. It was a game featuring wide swaths of open landscapes, and yet no foes to impede your path. It was just you, your horse, and the mysterious colossi. Suffice to say, it was an important title, and I'll spare you the rest of that tangent. Nowadays, I try to notice this same deliberate sense of isolation through empty, unchallenged space more cognizantly. Rare is the game that can inspire it quite as thoughtfully as Shadow of the Colossus. But I think Hollow Knight does subtly know when to leave you alone. I'm not talking about the quiet corridors, the long pauses, or the lamentations by the waters. I'm talking about long and distinctly lonely gameplay, in which you're forced to be alone with your thoughts while juggling some kind of other external cognitive load. I'm talking about the White Palace and the Abyss. Hollow Knight's two loneliest levels are its brightest and its darkest, and their aesthetics and contexts evoke two distinctly varied types of loneliness. Both left me feeling cold, but one in the forlorn, melancholic sort of way, and the other in a more claustrophobic and numbing fashion. It wouldn't be correct to say that there are no enemies in the Abyss or the White Palace. There is a non-zero number in both, but the way in which you fight them feels distinctly empty. First, the context. There's so much character to every opponent, big and small, in Hollow Knight, that you can't help but feel humbled by each encounter. It's the rhythm of the thing. Combat's a core part of the experience, so combatants feel like they creep and crunch into place, one after another. It's tough at first, but once you get accustomed to the rhythm, the dread of a fight becomes a familiar, comforting thing. Not quite so dreaded. As the events of Hollow Knight progress, though, you learn your opponents might not have as much agency as you initially presumed. Particularly, the weaker enemies are robbed of that agency and motive that gives them these lively personalities by an infectious virus. They become husks, obsessed with a singular purpose: to kill, to die, to become one with their brightest dream. This instills a different kind of dread from that of combat. They're not in their right minds, they're not really fighting back, and they'll gleefully charge into you for a devastating self-destruct. If you note the eyes and the orange spores enemies release on defeat, you'll see the infection's been taking root in your stronger opponents as well. In terms of color scheme, Hollow Knight is a very cool-toned game. Blues, greens, purples, and blacks make up the majority of its backgrounds and scenery. The orange smoke, the orange eyes, the spores and pustules enemies burst into are bright, fever-warm by contrast. It stands out from the environment like some kind of unwanted thing, an invasive species, in both color and purpose. If you want the game's true ending, you need to break the source of this infection, and to break the source, you need to visit 3 locations, 2 of which noticeably lack enemies: an opulent kingdom, blindingly bright and full of sharp-edged obstacles and architecture, and an abyss, ink black, underground, and teeming with shades. Like yours. We begin in darkness. The abyss rests deep at the bottom of Loneliest, below the ancient basin. The first time you visit it will be for a different item, but here, at the bottom of the world, you already get the sense you've dropped deep below the faintest traces of civilization. It's cold, it's eerie, it's not even just dark, it's grayscale, outright devoid of even the most muted blues you're used to. On the drop down, you'll encounter bugs that slink aimlessly around their respective platforms. Killing them releases the only bright color in frame. The infection's potency is highlighted in the most striking puff of orange smoke possible, erupting against a colorless background. These enemies don't feel particularly mindful, and though there is a cavern nearby with some much-needed life and color, that's not really our destination. We continue to drop down until we hit the bottom. This is it. We're as deep below as it gets. Down here, a side of the screen is shrouded in pitch-black darkness, only illuminating as you move towards it, but the darkness too moves, forever out of reach and always there. Black particle effects dance before your eyes, atoms of void lingering in the atmosphere, if you can call it that. Visibility is better than in Deepnest at least, which is perhaps a big part of why the Abyss isn't considered as famously terrifying, but what is visible is skeletal. A floor bed of remains that make each footstep sound and feel like the crunching of bones underfoot. This isn't a graveyard per se, but a catacomb, a secret past buried so deep below the surface it may as well be forgotten. Except by its residents. In your Hunter's Journal or Enemy Compendium, the writer ponders if life can even prosper down here. It kind of can. The only enemies in the Abyss are shades like yours, the ones your knight leaves behind when they fall. Being swarmed by what is perhaps by now a familiar sight, but one the player associates with themselves, can give the player pause. It's a bit startling. As they come at you in the dark and you push on through tight corridors and pools of void, with dark tendrils clawing out at you, the Abyss chokeholds you. It feels like being alone with shadows of yourself, resentful, rebellious, yet hardly resilient. The shades die easily and don't inflict a lot of damage. It feels pitiful to be striking them down, especially once you learn who they are. See, the Abyss is the source of void, the dark substance your knight is partly made of. The other shades are called siblings, echoes of your kin from an age long past, when the Pale King experimented with placing void in his children. Void is the crucial thing here. The king realized this dark substance was the key to defeating the infection. As seen with the bugs on your way down, the Abyss provides the starkest contrast to the obsessive dreaming that invades Loneliest's people. Funnily enough, it's located as down-to-earth as you can get. The White Palace is its polar opposite, located outside of the map entirely. It is a massive citadel with its head in the clouds. It's an old place too, but one now found in dreams. You're greeted at the entrance by the Pale King's friendly subjects. But once deep inside, you find yourself in a ruthless gauntlet of spears, buzzsaws, and bug-like drones. The drones are not sentient, they can't be killed, and operate more like platforms to pogo jump off of, and if you touch them, they emit a powerful shock. The White Palace is all platforming, no combat. In this regard, it's not something the player is used to, and the result is a massive and sometimes literal difficulty spike. And yet, the palace's dreamlike ambiance somewhat offsets your aggravation. Beautiful snow-white particle effects dance across your screen, the large ones patterned and ornate like snowflakes in the shapes of lilies, and the small ones bright like atoms of stardust. Composer Christopher Larkin bursts out one of his most mesmerizing tracks here, in an album he's already filled with bangers. The White Palace theme evokes a fittingly dreamlike sense of being lost, complementing the dazzling white background in bloom, left out of focus just enough to communicate a sense of depth, a sense that no amount of exploration could possibly cover how massive this place really is. It's hypnotic. But the palace's mechanics are anything but trance-like, unless you're a speedrunner. Rather, they make you aspire to something trance-like. You're always trying to hit that perfect flow state, that right timing and momentum that will get you over the next hurdle and the next and the next. Finding your equilibrium on any given jump or dash is crucial, but it's also famously frustratingly difficult. These opposing emotions, the one that's bled out of you through precise and demanding gameplay, and the one that lulls you into a lonely but thoughtful reverie through aesthetics, should feel dissonant, but it doesn't. It feels like everything could be wrong, but the sense of place is always just a little bit too right. If the Abyss is like being alone with your thoughts late into the middle of the night, the Palace is like the days of a bright dawn after a long and all-consuming dream. Not totally a nightmare, but definitely a dream that lingers heavy. Any lightness is a small, illusory comfort. The two locations do have something in common though. The Victorian-inspired architecture, spikes, spires, and stained glass windows that fill much of the rest of the world also fill these two spaces. It makes sense for a palace, but in the Abyss, it appears in the shape of an abandoned lighthouse, one the knight can climb up to turn back on. The light from it stops the void tendrils from lashing out so much, and allows the knight to travel a dark pool to the other side. It's a long swim, the darkness of the Abyss broken by a light that feels turned up almost overwhelmingly too high, until you find a fountain of void, held up by a statue. So I've described two aesthetics. Why does this matter? In Hollow Knight, the clash between dark and light mirrors that between reality and dream. The Pale King outfitted his palace with all these obstacles because he'd grown paranoid, and in his paranoia, he isolated himself deep inside and died there, tragically, alone, within a lost dream. Despite his fear of the infection, now itself spreading through dreams, he lost his way in one himself, while the husks of his children lay at the bottom of the world. They too are alone, but alone together in the dark. Is it better to be with the people, on the ground level, choked into cramped spaces knowing you still begin and end alone? Or is it better to be safe, alone, walled in comfort and opulence while the rest of the world burns? I don't know. I think option 2 burns too though. It self-fulfills and perpetuates the very fate it seeks to avoid. This light, this halo, is like a flame for a moth, and it consumes the father. When you try to read his last thoughts in the White Palace, you see the mantra he repeated, time and again, while raising his children to be sacrificed, and outfitting his defenses, and eventually succumbing to complete, utter, safe, and sterile isolation. No cost too great. Once you acquire the King's Badge and return to the Abyss, you're able to visit a place even deeper below, a chamber called the Birthplace. This is where you'll find the required item. The catacombs become even more suffocating here, corridors upon corridors of discarded ashen shells, while sibling shades come at you from all sides. Upon reaching the bottom and collecting the necessary item though, the siblings turn tame and stop fighting back, as if familiarized by your presence, recognizing it. One level, basked in holy light, ends with the cautionary tale of a father and a king who isolated himself, and the other, bathed in unholy darkness, ends with a reconciliation with kindred spirits. I'm sorry you didn't make it. I'm sorry I did. In the Birthplace, the knight is able to see their reflection and enter into their own dream. It is as unlike their father's as it gets. You experience a dark and long-forgotten and dark memory of when they climbed their way up the abyss, while the shells of their siblings rain down from the ceilings. One by one, they all fall down. But you climb. You climb. You climb. You climb. And you... In wilds beyond, they speak your name with reverence and regret. For none could tame our savage souls, yet you the challenge met. Under palest watch you taught we changed, base instincts were redeemed. A world you gave to bug and beast, as they had never dreamed. This is the elegy for Loneliest by Monomon the Teacher, and these are the first 4 lines you read as you begin the game. The Pale King is said to have enlightened and civilized these lands, causing them to forget about their old god, the Radiance. But forgotten gods can still linger, in dreams, in hopes, in a nation's collective memory. The king picked the titular Hollow Knight, not to be confused with your knight, to seal the infection away, believing them to be a pure vessel who could contain it by virtue of its purity, its lack of feeling. In their memory, the knight recalls seeing their sibling, the Hollow Knight, be the only one to make it out. With one look back, and a resigned acceptance, while they themselves plummeted deep back down, back into the abyss. But the plan didn't work, did it? There was an idea instilled. The Hollow Knight was not so hollow after all, and grew to care for their father while growing up in the White Palace. As they, too, dreamed, the Radiance was able to escape into the minds of others. Hollow Knight as a game is about the infectious power of dreams, how the allure of a better life, however vague its definition may be, can be so magnetic that it can destroy a person from the inside. But with all their thematic importance, dreams and dream worlds mostly exist to be broken in Hollow Knight. You spend most of your time outside of them, overcoming great adversity on mortal soil while lonely but rarely alone. Later into the game, you even fight alongside some friends from time to time, though tragically, those times are always short. But they are beautiful. They stand out. Maybe our obsessions with better lives distracts us from the only one we already have. Down here, amidst grass, amidst flowers, amidst dirt and amidst adversity. Amidst people. I've always found it striking that the 2 opposing poles around this idea are found in their rawest, most heartbreaking forms in the game's loneliest locations, telling stories of fathers and children both isolated from each other. But as the knight, you're uniquely positioned to encounter these spaces from a profound and personal perspective. In a memory of your father, you're given the space to reflect on all you've overcome to get here. You should be proud, even as he still finds ways to test you with skills you haven't mastered yet. In the memory of your siblings, you're suffocated by survivor's guilt, but through reconciliation, you become something of a champion to and for them. They can't go with you, not yet, but that's okay. No cost too great. It's an easy thing for a king with all the wealth in the world to say. I can think of one though.